All right, our recording's in progress. Here we are, roaming freely inside the cage. This actually is episode 31, if you can believe it. 31 episodes. So we are just screaming along here. We're going to be starting tonight on page 67. And how many type threes do we have? Do we have any type threes tonight? No type threes at all? Really? Interesting.
I'm marginal.
You're marginal? Okay. All right, then you are going to be our our marginal model for type three.
Depends on which book I'm reading.
I see. But actually, when I did the test again that I sent everybody out when we started this study 30 episodes ago, I tested as a three, which was surprising to me because I
Wow.
first tested as a nine years and years ago, and then Nina completely, just disbanded that, said I was a four and then a five, and so, but yeah, tested as a three. So okay, you and me, Bill, we're gonna be the three
Okay.
models for tonight. We had a bunch of nines, which made it a lot of fun going through the nines.
Okay.
Nines will be alluded to again in this, but yeah, tonight is going to be all about the threes. So before we dig into type three on page 67, any old business from last week? Anything that you want to bring up? Any questions or thoughts? Going once, going twice. Okie dokie. Well, let's see what he's going to say about threes. So we started the beginning of this chapter and this section of the book, talking about uh, this idea of the canopy, and that the types were like leaves of the tree. Remember, the nine types are like different types of leaves on the tree. So this is the part that the sun directly hits, that sends the energy back into the branches and the trunk and into the roots. And so he's keeping that metaphor going. And then he did some general information, starting on page 55, introducing types 9, 3, and 6, but talking more about this idea of the holy ideas and the virtues. And last week we went and made sure that we drew the connection between the holy ideas and the virtues and the passions, and then the types of experience, the centers of experience. So we made all those connections and the actual descriptions of the nine types. So now he's continuing on after having gone through a longish look at type 9, because he also said that type 9 is where he typically starts a study, any study of the Enneagram, because it's kind of an archetype for all the others. And so type 9 kind of embodied a few things. But I think we're going to find that even going through type 3, and I imagine going through all the types, that that you're going to see a lot of commonality. I mean, I sure did. And I was wondering if it was because, I tested as a three that I got a lot of three in there, or if it's just something that is a common experience to all of us. So that's something that we'll take a look at as we go further in. So starting at page 67, holy ideas for type three are law, harmony, and hope. Ennea type three lies at the center of the heart triad. Types two, three, and four. And if you go back to page five, just to refresh, and take a look at his figure two there, and you'll see what he's talking about. So as we're dealing with types 9, 3, and 6, which form an equilateral triangle, but each one of those first three types are going to be right at the center of the three centers of experience, whether you're a body type, a heart type, or a mind type. And so the 9 was right at the center of the body experience, and the heart, or the 3, is now the center of the heart experience. And when we talk about 6, that'll be right at the center of the mind center of experience. So that's what he's talking about there. How we basically process our experiences. Do we process them first through our body, through intuition, that gut instinct? Do we approach it emotionally through our heart, intellectually through our mind? So now back to page 67. Type 3 lies at the center of the heart triad, types 2, 3, and 4, just as type 9 stands at the center of the body triad. Unlike type 9, however, the three's energy is unbalanced toward excessive yang. And if you remember, the 9 was unbalanced toward excessive yin. So you're going to have that contrast as well. When living in the automatic habits of ego, okay, living in the automatic habits of ego, that means that's the untreated, right? That's the unexplored, as he called it earlier, um, type 3, in the automatic habits of ego. So this is going to be showing us the worst of the worst. Don't think that that's going to be describing all threes. When living in the automatic habits of ego, the three's energy flows outward in all directions at once. Now, that's in direct contrast to the 9, which he said closes in, comes in toward itself when they're in just in general in life, but especially when the chips are down. The Enneagram tradition describes 3 names for type three's holy idea, or awareness of its original energy, which is a lot better way of putting this holy idea, which he said makes it sound like it's just a concept rather than an actual experience. So the Enneagram tradition describes 3 names for type three's awareness of its original energy. They are holy law, holy harmony, and holy hope. The first 2 refer to the spiritual awareness that the life force unfolds lawfully and harmoniously in creative, unified patterns without need for any control or guidance from us. In other words, its natural flow is both lawful and harmonious with the needs of the whole. Infants with this particular sensitivity originally experience the life force as a creative energy flowing within them. More accurately, they make no distinction between themselves and the creative energy. Oh, sorry for that intermission. I think just a sec. Ah, holy hope is a psychological effect of being aware of holy law and harmony. Holy hope is the psychological effect of being aware of holy law and harmony. It is the experience of being in the zone, creatively free and able to move without effort, according to the needs of each situation. Listen to how Rabindranath Tagore describes this awareness. As you read, remember that poetry and music are identical in Bengali culture. In Eastern India, you would sing and dance to this poem. Next page. Here's the poem. The same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth in numberless blades of grass and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. It is the same life that is rocked in the ocean cradle of birth and death, in ebb and flow. I feel my limbs are made glorious by the touch of this world of life. And my pride is from the life throb of ages dancing in my blood this moment. So he's talking about this idea of kind of an inevitable flow, this idea of law and harmony, that a spiritual awareness of the life force is going to flow this way. And this poem for him is realizing that idea. That same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. The Tao itself is this idea of just the basic existence of the universe. The Tao gave rise to the universe, and it is flowing. Jesus' idea of spirit, the Jews' idea of spirit, always in motion. We are either in motion with that spirit or we're not. That's the idea. Are we in the flow? The whole Wu Wei, the effortless effort of Taoism, is the idea that we are flowing with, in harmony with, and not, standing in some sort of gale force wind because we're moving in the wrong direction, but moving with. That way we don't have to push the rope. We don't have to push the river. We're able to flow with. And Jesus talks about the wind in the same sort of way. And so there's so much, cross-pollination going between traditions in this regard. Any comments or questions about that for the threes? Holy law, harmony, and hope. All right. So where does it go wrong? Initial wounding and subsequent development of the type 3. The 3 infant enters the world alive to the creative, living, and breathing quality of the life force, just as the 9 enters life with a direct awareness of the innate beauty of all beings because of their interconnectedness with original energy. The 3 arrives with a direct awareness of how all beings move and evolve as expressions of that energy. The energy is experienced as a field. The nature of a field is that whatever happens in one part is immediately felt in the whole. A field, even if spread out, is one unified moving organism. That line or those few sentences made me think of, the quantum field that we have talked about in the past. That superposition, when you're not looking at the quantum particles, they're all in this unified field. It's superposition. It's all possibilities existing at once. But as soon as you look, as soon as you try to run them through an experiment, then they drop out of superposition and they drop down into an either or category. Now it's either A or B. And basically, that's the same idea here, that direct awareness of this field, this flow of energy, and everything being interconnected within the flow is like superposition. And the child is not able to bring consciousness to that field. That's the whole idea. There's this really interesting theory that it's we bringing our consciousness to the field that actually changes the field, causes it to drop down in one or another type of category. But an infant doesn't have that consciousness yet, doesn't have that self-awareness yet, can't bring that to the field, and so experiences the field as it is, just all one thing flowing. It's only when we get a little older that we can actually bring consciousness to the field and change it. So the nature of a field is that whatever happens in one part is immediately felt in the whole. This idea of quantum entanglement, right? Whatever happens to this quantum particle is immediately happening in the other quantum particle. I love this stuff. I know it's probably geeking out, but I think it's great.
Dave, I I like the way you just explained that. Daniel Siegel was talking about something similar in like when we're in a contemplative place, we're hovering close to that field of infinite possibility. And when we name things, as soon as something gets a specific name, then it drops into what you were just describing.
That is perfect. Absolutely perfect. Yes, that's exactly it. And that's what we're trying to avoid, obviously, in contemplative practice, right? Whether it's just mindfulness and going through our day, Brother Lawrence style, or whether we're sitting in meditation or we're sitting in centering prayer, if we're on a sensory walk, as soon as we name something, as soon as we bring our consciousness to it, bring all of our thoughts to a point, we've now made a decision about that thing. It no longer flows as it is in that field, that spiritual field. We pulled it out of that. And what we're trying to, and obviously we need to be able to do that so we can just carry on business in life. But we want to freely be bilingual, have dual citizenship, move in and out of the field. We're a field, we're a particle, we're a wave and a particle, and that we can flow between those two. And but that's perfect, William. I love that. Don't name stuff when you're trying to keep yourself in superposition.
Really.
But it's beautiful because the infant does that naturally just because they have no choice.
Right.
Your dog does it naturally. Your cat does it naturally because they have no choice. They're not processing things in this kind of consciousness, this kind of awareness. And so they're making decisions, they're aware, they're living, they're eating, they're doing what they do, but at the same time, they're part of that whole in a way that an infant is, but a way that we can't anymore unless we start to retrain ourselves to go back and learn this contemplative practice. And if you think about Jesus, this is what he's saying all the time. You know, you want to find your life, lose it. Well, what does he mean? He says it means don't name it, right? Let go of the egoic type of mindset, that egoic consciousness that always wants to name things, to batten them down, to control them to advantage. And that's the killer. It's the killer of the moment, the killer of kingdom.
Mm.
Okay, where were we? The infant three intuits the life force this way more deeply than any other type. It experiences itself as a vibrant wave within the larger current of universal chi. But early in childhood, the experience of being in relationship with caregivers who have themselves lost awareness of their connection to the life force threatens the young three with the loss of this perception. That is, the three, parented by people who can no longer themselves experience this perpetually moving, intelligent, creative facet of the life force, finds her own intuitions so unsupported that they begin to fade. Her need to remain intimately connected to her caregivers is so strong that she feels she has no choice but to allow the obscuring of one chi to happen. The obscuring is experienced as a feeling that the creative flow has faded, which leaves the three believing that she moves and acts as a separate doer. In other words, she becomes identified with her activity. All right? That's it. And this is something that I think we all do. This isn't going to be just threes. To become identified with our activity, to see ourselves as a separate doer, not this intimately connected with everyone and everything. And now we can become identified with just our own activity, with our own accomplishments, with our own roles. And then once convinced that she is separate from the original source of life, she comes to believe that she herself is the cause of her activity and that her life is the effect of her own movement. The sense of being truly engaged by and within original energy is lost. Inevitably, the belief that everything is up to me brings about the death of holy hope. Hopelessness then becomes the not whole, which the three experiences as inner emptiness, a sense that she is not quite genuine or real. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Oof.
I mean, I really resonated with all of this and a lot of the stuff that's coming too. But I'm not sure it's just because maybe I have either a three wing or maybe I'm a misidentified three. I'm not really sure.
Mhm.
But I think maybe there's going to be some of this in every single one of us, obviously, and maybe some more than others. But this is a lot of stuff that I was certainly resonating with. This idea of Wan Chi, I wanted to spend a little bit of time with it because if it's so much of a focus here in the three. Y'all remember what Wan Chi actually means?
No.
So Wan means original or innate, something that we're born with in Chinese, and Qi, of course, is the life force. So this idea of Wan Qi would be a vital or innate, prenatal, if you will, life force. And so I have a little thing I want to show you and see if this maybe gets us a little clearer into it.
Like an original energy that you're born with, Dave? Is that what you mean?
It's more than that. Take a look at this and then see if it answers the question, and we can talk more about it. So Wan means original or beginning. Qi is an integrated form of energy, material, and information. Wan Qi refers broadly to the original substance that makes up everything in the universe, including life. The concept of Wan Qi is one of the cornerstones upon which the ancient Chinese built their view and understanding of the universe and life. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu says, from Tao comes one, from one comes two, from two comes three, from three comes 10,000 things. 10,000 things carry yin and hold yang, with qi being harmonized. This can be interpreted as Tao is the fundamental law of the universe. From Tao comes one, which is a state of oneness or unity. One can also be called one Qi. From one Qi comes two, yin and yang. From yin and yang comes three, which represents objects and things that are more specific. From three comes the 10,000 things, which symbolize everything in the universe. And now you have this kind of representation here. Tao leading to the one leading to yin and yang, and then to the three, which is specific things and object, and then to everything in the universe. What I was thinking about this is, as I'm just learning more about Wan Shi, it connects in a way with logos. Now, you remember logos in John 1? And in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Well, the word there that is translated as word in Greek is logos. But logos means something very similar to Wan Shi means in one way. Logos is also the foundational principles on which the universe is based. It's the reason behind everything that is. And so when John uses that to represent the word, which is the metaphor for Christ, then he's talking about that everything that is emanates from and has its source in this force, this logos. Wan Shi occupies that same space, but there is a big difference between Greek thought and Eastern thought, whether it's Hebrew or whether it's Chinese. Whereas to the Greeks, the logos, it's this fundamental force, but it's a rational force. It's a structural force, as opposed to Wan Qi, which is a vital force or a material force. So there's a difference between Western reason and Eastern just vitality and vitalism. You see that in Hebrew thought as well, where the Greeks are going to focus on mental activity and the Hebrews are going to focus just on living life at a much more gut level, a much more instinctual level. One of the analogies that I read was that if the whole universe was a building, well, then the logos would be the blueprint, the architect's blueprint for that building. But the Wan Shi would be the bricks and the mortar of that building. And yet those bricks and that mortar would also be alive and moving at the same time. They're not static pieces. They're part of this living emanation, but it's not rational. It's not a concept. It's not something that we think. And so with the logos in John 1, we have that's the idea of the blueprint, but also bringing in the Hebrew idea of it all and merging the two. We have a blueprint that's also alive and alive in Christ. So I just like that merging of these ideas. But what's common to them is that, and even think about this in Genesis 1, God created the heavens and the earth, but at the very beginning, the Spirit of God is hovering over the formless, faceless deep, right? And then he starts to divide things into pairs of opposites, light and dark, land and sea, and so on and so forth. But there is this oneness, this chaotic void that's out there, And so we have that same sort of idea that there was something before, this basic energy that was formless and chaotic, and then it starts to get organized, and there is light. And so we have the same idea. Here's the Tao, this fundamental law, but then that kind of coalesces into the one and the unity. And then that splits into yin and yang and so on and so forth. And so we have this underlying oneness to everything that we see in all of the immense diversity and individual form and function of life. And so when we reverse the clock and we move backward, we get back to this Wan Shi, this life force. We are all born out of it, and we are born into it, and we are aware of it at the infant level. And then as we grow into consciousness and we start naming things, then we lose the perception of it. Did that help at all?
That was beautiful.
I like that.
I threw a lot of
David,
stuff at it. I don't know if it helped, but
it made me think of a concept that Alan Watts was talking about in one of his YouTube videos, where He was saying like even the natural laws like cause and effect, which I think are kind of the holy laws we're referring to, or one of the holy laws we're referring to. He was saying there is no cause and effect because that's dualistic. He was saying there is just the cause. There is only one cause that is echoing throughout eternity, basically. And
Mm.
it's like that same idea of the Tao where, what you were just describing. In fact, these holy laws, the law of harmony, holy law and holy hope, they're beyond time essentially. Like
Mm.
the idea is like this moment is the cause, just like the Big Bang was the cause or something like that. Like the cause is constantly present. And this idea of time is this egoic construct that helps us to organize things. But the idea of the holy concept or the holy idea is there is no sense of time. It's this constant unfolding in the present, and something else you said earlier, like as we begin to unpack some of these holy ideas for each of the types, they begin to resemble the other holy ideas, right?
Mm.
Like holy perfection is a process rather than something that's perfectly static in time.
Mm.
It's this constant becoming process.
Yep.
So all of these concepts kind of point back to each other in some way.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we're gonna get more and more of a sense of as we go further and further into this. There aren't the hard and fast lines between the types that we might like to think.
Mm.
They all are interconnected, and we're going to find ourselves, I think, at least at some levels in each type.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's right.
And we're kind of getting out there, and I understand that. So some of you might be sitting there thinking, yeah, you guys are so out into the stratosphere here. How is this going to be any earthly good for me when I got to pay my bills tomorrow, right? You know, and so keep in mind that even as William was saying, which I really believe is the true description of the universe, that there is no cause and effect. There's only cause. There's only one thing. And but the truth is, in our lives, in our daily lives, we are experiencing things dualistically. We can't
Mhm.
get away from that. As soon as we bring our consciousness to this one thing, it resolves into two things. It resolves into some sort of dualism. And we can't get away from it. We don't want to get away from that. What we want to be able to do, though, is see the unity behind the duality. So,
Mhm.
yes, there is cause and effect in our lives as we experience life. Just like Newtonian mechanics describes laws that look absolutely like laws, but only within certain limitations of acceleration and temperature and so on and so forth. And when you get beyond that, then all of Newton's laws break down, which is where Einstein comes in. And he starts to describe things that can approach the speed of light. But when you get into the very small quantum particles, Einstein's laws break down, the theories break down. Now we enter quantum mechanics. And so there's always a bigger fish, I guess. And so when we say, yes, of course there's cause and effect, but that's within the narrow confines of our daily experience. But
Mhm.
move beyond that into our superposition, into our mystical and contemplative space, and it's going to be completely different. And I think that's what the value of kind of going out into Neverland with some of these concepts is it's trying to describe something that can't be described, obviously. But if we at least can acknowledge rationally the conceptual possibility of these things being out there,
Mhm.
then when we move into contemplative space, we actually experience them. And then we have a way to kind of put them in place when we come back down to earth. And I think that's a value so that we can continue to code shift between these two,
Mhm.
between the perceived and experienced reality of everyday life and its dualism, and then the oneness and the timelessness of the mystical experience. And we can go back and forth. And even as we are going through our daily life, we can still have a sense of that oneness underneath it all. That's the Brother Lawrence school, to be a part of and aware of the oneness in everything that you do all day long without having to have it seams in between your experiences.
Right. Yeah. And I like the idea of if we, surrender to the idea that there are natural laws of the universe just constantly operating, and those laws are operating in harmony. And as I surrender to that, I experience this holy hope, right? Which would be similar to what we call faith, I guess. Like just well, having trust, I guess, right? Like this idea of knowing things are going to unfold in some beautiful way, and trusting that in some way.
And continuing to engage in the process, even in the midst of the doubt and the uncertainty,
Yeah.
trusting that at the end of this rainbow, there's going to be something there,
Hmm. Hmm.
All right. Hopefully that took us somewhere.
Oops.
Let's
Oh.
continue on page 69. Um, Threes then have to defend against the pain of hopelessness by going unconscious regarding their inner emptiness. They maintain this lack of awareness by becoming compulsive, relentless production machines. This is the primary distortion of their natural style of creative engagement. The active yang phase of their original energy grows so unbalanced that rather than engaging with the natural flow of vital essence, it engages upon it. Now we're getting into where I really identify with a lot of this stuff. So as he said in the previous paragraph, hopelessness then becomes the not whole, which the three experiences as inner emptiness, a sense that he or she is not quite genuine or real. The hopelessness comes inevitably. The belief that everything is up to me brings about the death of holy hope. So as the three moves out of their undifferentiated state, as they move into this idea that they have to produce, they have the illusion now that they really are acting on their own steam. That's a recipe for the hopelessness, that eventually there's not going to be enough of them to go around. There's not going to be able to do the things that they need to do. Then they have to defend against that pain of hopelessness by going unconscious regarding that emptiness. So now the type becomes the defender of their ego by making them numb to the emptiness, right? Same way all the types are going to do in their individual ways. So the threes maintain the lack of awareness by becoming compulsive, relentless production machines. The primary distortion of their natural style of creative engagement, the active yang phase of their original energy grows so imbalanced that rather than engaging with the natural flow, they engage upon it. In other words, now we're trying to control it. That is a whole entirely different experience. And we won't recognize it in the midst of it. The energy of a three living the egoic life seems to simply gush out into the world. I recall once riding in a shuttle bus to pick up my car at the airport. It was Mother's Day. The driver, an older man, asked a young, sharply dressed female passenger if she thought mothers should have to work. They immediately got into a discussion that everyone in the bus could easily overhear. In 5 minutes, they managed to sketch out their entire life stories, including their careers, their income levels, their marriages, and even whether or not they were able to have children. Listening to them, I almost immediately recognized them as likely threes. This teaches you something, right? Be careful how you converse in public because there's probably a psychologist in the next seat. He's analyzing you.
Yes.
Observing a pair of threes running on ego power is a little like watching two poles of that static electricity generator your high school science teacher used to simulate lightning bolts. The voltage is really impressive, but it produces less wattage than the display would seem to imply.
Oh boy, that's perfect. Yeah.
That's a good one. I like that. Just as inertia is the prime characteristic of egoic energy for the nine, lack of restraint is the mark of egoic energy at three. A three running on ego is a persistent and driven doer. In the 70s, the California-based EST movement phrase for them was a human doing. The external doing is mirrored internally by the ceaseless production of plans and to-do lists. Threes are masterful multitaskers. You see them in airports reviewing their notes for a sales meeting while chatting on cell phones with their broker as they wait in line to change seating assignments with the gate agent. While the ability to attend to many things at once is a truly great advantage in a crisis situation, the compulsion to pay attention to a variety of things at once, even when things are going smoothly, is simply an expression of the three's habit of pumping energy outward in all directions at once. Threes nevertheless feel a lot of pleasurable excitement while this energy is overflowing, and thus the excitement easily becomes a substitute for deeper feelings. It is often quite mysterious to threes when they first hear that their Enneatype is one of the emotional types, right? This is because threes often have a hard time locating and tapping into their feelings. They have learned to avoid them because they seem like a waste of time. After all, feelings tend to get in the way of accomplishing the job. People who wallow in feelings usually finish last, and the threes want to avoid that at any cost. I once heard Eli Jackson Bear, an Enneagram teacher based in a Hindu tradition, say that threes burn their feelings as fuel for all the production. I would add to that the heat of the fire is experienced as a kind of enthusiasm, and threes have to settle for that instead of the entire gamut of feelings. Okay,
Wow.
Bill, as a possible three, are you resonating with any of this?
None.
Okay.
I think when we were doing the Enneagram, I was just negotiating a buyout of my business that I'd had for a decade. And it influenced the way I felt like I had to do things that I didn't feel like doing that were kind of the end of a dream that didn't materialize. And it was kind of an overshadowing of things. So I may have answered the questions more like a three, but I don't feel like this. As you're reading through that, that's not my natural go-to.
Okay. That's good insight. That's good insight for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I cut somebody off. Was that Lori or Judy or somebody?
I've got,
Okay, Judy.
I have two friends, one that has unfortunately we parted ways when we were back in Pennsylvania in New Jersey, and the other is here. And I would say that she is becoming an evolved three. I mean, the my one friend in New Jersey was an incredibly, she was a human doing. I mean, her energy was always flowing, and she was both coaching people. She became a senior vice president. I mean, that stuff is rewarded in the corporate world for sure.
Right.
But I think it's at the compromise of that inner emptiness and the feelings that they have, pushed away. And the last thing that you read about, let's say the threes burn their feelings as fuel for all the production. That was my friend Monica to a T, boy. Oof. And when we parted company, when we moved here to California, I mean, she was so full of emotion of loss that stunned me. Just totally stunned me that, you're so important to me and I'm really feeling connected and I don't want to lose you and, let's stay in touch and all of that. Well, that never happened. I would reach out to her, kind of being buoyed up by that feeling that, we would be able to stay in touch. Didn't happen. And it was something that I really had to work out when I came into Al-Anon, and Jerry helped me work through the steps in terms of,
It was
all
the
of the steps.
cauliflower, sweet taters. Yeah. Corey.
Get out of there, Corey.
Oops.
Go ahead, Jerry. Judy.
Anyway,
Mm,
Anyway, my other friend, Stacy, I think she definitely identifies as a three. But she has, in recent times, she's realized and getting closer to retirement, she's realizing that she wants to become a more whole person. And she's working with a spiritual director at this point, and really starting to become calmer, more relaxed. I see a change in her, a big time change in her. She's always a blast to be with. And she is still an exuberant three with all of this stuff that's being talked about. Um, yeah, but she's becoming a really more accessible, more genuine, more real person. This
mhm,
was such a wonderful description for for me to have, because oftentimes wondered about threes,
mhm,
but I always admired their doingness and how much they could juggle at the same time. But
right.
I was exhausted by by not wanting to be that.
Mhm,
So, way.
mhm. And I think that
So
exact
yeah.
quality of being disconnected or being able to shut off their feelings are why we don't have a lot of threes in these types of meetings.
Well,
Like
that's a good
like
point.
they don't spend time exploring this kind of stuff. They're out working on projects basically, like
Yeah.
being a separate doer, essentially, a performer.
I think that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah,
I
you're
think
right.
I've got a family member, I think, who is a pretty sure is a three, and they're kind of, I guess we call the unaware, is it
Mhm,
unevolved or unaware three?
mhm,
I think it's more about they're always kind of reading their resume to me and they're telling me all the things they've done and
mhm,
their accolades and things like that
mhm,
and whenever I touch on anything that talks about reflection or awareness, they just don't want to go there. It's
mhm.
just like it's off limits and the
Yeah.
door just shuts, and I thought, okay, they're not big reflectors, and at least the unaware ones aren't. And your friend Judy, your friend sounds wonderful that she's gotten to that point. I barely know
Oh,
a three that is capable of that kind of awareness and wanting to make a change. That's amazing. Because most of them don't want to talk about their feelings and they just don't
oh, it's
there.
really
Yeah.
true. And
They're all about, I think they're all about what they do and what they've achieved and all the stripes
yes,
on
very much so.
their
Oh, yeah.
badges and stuff. That's really where they get their worth from. So I feel hard sad for threes to try to retire. And then what do they retire to if they
Oh,
can't
yeah.
be, I guess they'll just find other things to do, maybe.
Probably. Yeah, I don't know.
And they can also run the risk of being somebody who can perform
Hmm.
at talking about feelings. So, like, I
Um,
think that moment where you were saying goodbye, you were getting a performance and all of the emotions and so on was there, but like that. That depth of emotion, that real connectivity kind of emotion is, so I work with threes in as clients and they're good at pretending to be a good boyfriend or a good husband.
mm,
You know what I mean? They can play the role, but
right.
not really feeling it on this deeper level because of that ability to just turn feelings off and
Yeah.
disconnect. Mhm.
I remember in the early stages of my relationship with my New Jersey friend, I invited her to come to a Lectio Divina spiritual reflection that we were doing on the beach with a group of women friends. And it was all about contemplation and reading a scriptural passage and then reflecting on it. And she had such a hard time with that. She just, because we had three different stages of just reflecting on the passage and then writing about it and second and third and writing more. And she told me afterwards, she said, I just can't do this. I just can't. I'm just not ready for it. That was such a good description, William. It was like, oh, okay. I guess. Yeah, all right. We're on different levels at this point, but I still, I loved her energy and her enthusiasm, and And she just radiated that funness also.
Hmm.
Yeah. So they have a lovely side, but boy,
Hmm.
trying to develop closeness was a tough proposition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, interesting to me is that when I read this, it totally describes me in my 20s and early 30s. You know, now I think I forced myself to be that because I realized being the introvert and sort of the geek was not getting me anywhere I wanted to be. And so I learned to be this. But I remember that feeling of having to just almost outrun the things that were inside. I just had to keep busy enough, and if I did keep busy enough, and if I kept accomplishing things and doing things, then everything was okay. And there was that sense until I finally got mugged, until everything came crashing down, and then I had to, face the fact that this was no longer tenable, and I had to go in a different direction. So maybe here what we're looking for are threes who have been mugged.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well, usually
true.
they say it usually takes some kind of an emotional crisis for the threes to kind of turn the corner. Like there needs to be, like, in fact, one of my clients who is a three, like he had a panic attack when his wife served him with divorce papers, and he was completely oblivious to, you know.
Oh,
And prior to being served, he had never experienced anxiety in his life, right? He was never in touch with that part of himself. So it took a hard break to kind of crack him open to begin to regain access to this heart center kind of energy. Um, and
sense.
it might have been a little too late in the relationship, but
Yeah.
you know, mm,
That's kind of what's
Hard
strange about the three being in the middle of the heart side.
mhm,
I mean, I
Mm,
affiliate this type of description that he's going through more like an eight.
mm, yes,
mm, mm.
yes,
And,
and
and, and
threes
you're
can
right, Bill.
resemble the
Threes
eight.
and eights have some similar characteristics.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah,
I think they're
dude.
two of the
Yeah.
most like aggressive numbers on the Enneagram.
yes,
Mm.
yes.
So
Mhm,
there's some
Because
similarities.
Judy, the threes that you're describing in that corporate environment to me were very eight-ish.
mhm,
Yes. Yeah. But
mhm,
she had a tender side because she was one of the few people in, a very engineering focused company
Yeah.
that wanted to mentor people.
mhm.
Um, so there was some kind of need for relationship connection there. And she did it well. She really helped a lot of people at least climb the corporate ladder. I don't know about feelings and all of that, but yeah. She was very successful at what she did.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, but that's wise, Bill, for sure. Yeah. Hmm. But it's
But
just lovely.
I think, William, you're right. They would be less likely to come to discussion like this where they would talk about their feelings. They're not
Yeah.
likely to necessarily want to do that unless they're evolving, like your friend Judy maybe is
Mhm,
Yeah.
looking at that other half, but
mhm.
Yeah.
they
And
don't talk.
again, part of that self-deception, right? Which is the what is it? The holy idea, and what's the other one? The virtue, or not the virtue,
Harmony.
The
Law and harmony.
passion.
Is it?
Oh,
the
the passion and the
passion.
avoidance and
Oh, the passion.
They, yeah, crap. Never mind. The thought went away.
the passion and the point of avoidance, that one.
Is it vainglory is the passion? Is it that right?
That's right.
Well, I was thinking about, like, oh, the deception piece, the self-deception,
Mhm.
right? Believing that their value comes from doing
Yeah.
rather than who they are, essentially. So like
It's their
that
identity,
first
right?
that first lie is the lie that they tell themselves, that they gain
Mhm.
value by doing and then become committed to that egoic doer.
Mhm.
And it's also achieving because their point of avoidance is failure. They don't like to fail.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
and,
Exactly.
and I know a three also who really puts on like a face. I've got it all together. I can perform, see, I can do this, but really underneath they're kind of falling apart. But they don't want to tell you that they're falling apart. They wouldn't dare show that they're falling apart. They are showing you strength and achievement and accomplishment. So it's like
That's the
this
point
sort
of
of image.
avoidance.
I'm
That's the
sorry.
point of
The point of
Yeah,
avoidance, which
exactly.
is
Because they don't
failure,
want to
right?
show failure. Yes.
Yes.
That's so true, Kathy. That's really true.
And then coming
Yeah.
back to what Bill said, if we just go to the top of the paragraph we just read, as Bill was saying, a couple of you were saying, and you start to find your self-worth in what you can do and what you accomplish, but then you actually start to feel pleasure in that, right?
Mhm.
So threes nevertheless feel a lot of pleasurable excitement while this energy is overflowing, and thus the excitement easily becomes a substitute for deeper feelings. It is often quite mysterious to threes when they first hear that their Enneatype is one of the emotional types. This is because threes have often had a hard time locating and tapping into their feelings. They have learned to avoid them because they seem like a waste of time. After all, feelings tend to get in the way of accomplishing the job. And so they've worked themselves around. They're starting to get a lot of pleasure, a lot of feedback, a lot of
Mhm.
attaboys and attagirls, all this stuff. And so feelings get pushed down because they are counterproductive to that
Mhm.
whole line that they have learned so well. And that whole line, that egoic style, is what is also anesthetizing them to what they really need.
Mhm. Yes.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
I think
continuing on in the last few minutes, if you recognize yourself as a three in these pages, and apparently none of us do, you probably also realize that your constant focus on doing requires so much psychic energy that you physically crash from time to time. This happens because doing is episodic. Once it's over, it's over. Nothing seems to last when all that you can experience is doing. Your energy always seems to be flowing out and away from you, and eventually you begin to feel exhausted and empty. A further side effect of this is that threes inevitably become preoccupied with image. Now, this is going back to what Kathy was just saying. Some of them are preoccupied with external images: cars, clothes, gadgets, toys, contracts, fame, power, and titles. Though for many, the preoccupation with image is more subtle and internal. It has to do with how useful and productive they are, how well they are accomplishing their goals. The three's problem with image actually is a result of the illusion that who you are can only be measured by what you accomplish. Constant production makes you lose sight of your own inner constancy. And so you have to create a convincing self image so that you can discover yourself in the effects you are producing in the world. Ultimately, you come to believe that you are the image. In short, you learn to manufacture the self rather than experience it as arising moment to moment within a living field of energy.
Mhm.
That's a great sentence right there.
Yes.
Ultimately, you come to believe you are the image. In short, you learn to manufacture the self rather than experience it arising moment to moment within a living field of energy. In other words, you're thinking about it, you're naming it, rather
Mhm.
than just letting it be in the field
Right.
of the moment.
And you're functioning as a separate doer rather than being part of the holy harmony, the holy unfolding.
So,
Dave,
so
I
just to,
really
just to
resonate.
clarify, Dave, well, I guess what we were reading before, I mean, just in a nutshell here in a minute or whatever we have left. I mean, he's really saying that the threes come into the world with this blast of energy and it just gets squelched by those around them, the caregivers that don't know how to handle it, so they start suppressing, and then that's all because of that. I mean, they have to hide all their emotions. Am I reading that right? Is that what Schaefer is saying?
Well, I mean, if you go back to page 68, the three infant enters the world alive to the creative, living, and breathing quality of the life force. Okay, so that's going to be the law and the harmony part of it, right? Which
Mhm.
then gives rise to the hope as they experience this. Just as the nine enters life with the direct awareness of the innate beauty of all things because of their interconnectedness with original energy, the three arrives with a distinct awareness of how all beings move and evolve as expressions of that energy, as a field. We talked about the field. The infant three intuits the life force way more deeply than any other type. Um, Then but in early childhood, in the middle of that paragraph, the experience of being in relationship with caregivers who have themselves lost awareness of their connection to the life force threatens the young three with the loss of this perception as well. That is, the three, parented by people who can no longer themselves experience this perpetually moving, intelligent, creative facet of the life force, finds her own intuition so unsupported that they begin to fade. Her need to remain intimately connected to her caregivers is so strong, she feels that she has no choice but to allow the obscuring of one she to happen. And the obscuring is experienced as a feeling that the creative force has faded, which leaves the three believing that she moves and acts as a separate doer. In other words, she becomes identified with her activity. So I think that is more as he's talking about it, more and rather than suppressing feelings, it's like, what do you do when your connection to this life force is no longer palpable to you? Well, you're going to substitute something else. You're going to substitute actually making things happen. And the three, is already innately pre-programmed to do exactly that, to make things happen. And then all the downflow from that, all the cause and effect from that, the preoccupation with image, with becoming a human doing, and so on and so
They
forth.
just start pivoting from the beginning and
Exactly.
just
They're pivoting
adapting.
because they no longer feel that connection to this force. And so they're trying to recreate it themselves rather than being a part of what's already there.
I was watching a recent YouTube video with Richard Rohr talking about the threes, and he he was pointing out that they also tend to be physically attractive people. Like they tend to be good-looking people. And that lends itself to this performer kind of mindset. So, I think part of it is this, alignment with the physical
The
piece
image.
that Schaefer is talking about here, but there is definitely something to be said for like somebody who can crack a smile and, kind of influence people and so on. And generally, I don't know of a single tree who is not physically attractive.
It's interesting.
So, Bill, do you want to be a three after all?
Well,
Must
no,
be.
what's
Hey,
what's
hey there,
really
hot stuff.
interesting, and I relate to this with what Judy said and what Kathy said is when I came into corporate life, I started with May Company for 3 years, and then came out here to Fluor. And those were the days where it was dress for success and the IBM model.
Yeah.
And so the whole mantra, if you were going to, and I was put in a high potential group,
Right.
that we were being groomed to be executives that fit the corporate mold. And I remember there was this guy in Greenville, and he did this evaluation of me, and he said, it really ticked me off because he said, you weren't going to be in sales because you're not motivated enough by money. Yeah, that was what he said. And I remember telling Gail this, and I said, this is BS.
Mm.
And finally, after 15 years there, I sucked it up for 15 years to kind of do what I felt I needed to do for my family. But I I couldn't do it anymore. And if somebody told me, you're like a grizzly in a zoo, you're untamable, you're an entrepreneur organizer, and this corporate culture that they're trying to squeeze you into this square hole, that's not you. And I had to leave. It was just
Mm.
terrible. But I was trying, that mold was clearly a 3 with an 8 foundation. And Judy, your friend that you left, I mean that's what she was being shaped into. And the whole move to get more females and minorities into executive management. I mean, they all were shoehorned into that.
Oh, absolutely. She could be aggressive as she wanted to be.
Yeah. And there were many people in corporate life that were empty shells. I remember my biggest disillusionment was when I looked at the 3 top guys at Payless Shoe Source, where I was at in May Company. They were like 3-year-old kids. And they didn't have foundation, they didn't have maturity, they just were awful. I thought that was a big disillusion for me at 30 years old, was experiencing that and viewing that. And that you're sitting here reading what those guys were. They're 3s.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them didn't have enough 8 that they should have had. Anyway,
Mm,
And
no, I
threes are
don't get that.
competitive too. They're competitive like eights, so yeah.
You know,
mhm.
but seeing this description, the whole piece of it, really, I found myself, feeling more compassionate towards threes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did, because
Ache for 'em.
wow, what they struggle with inside, and
Mhm.
wow, I mean, just that inner emptiness. God,
Yeah.
You,
And
you
then
want to
take
tell them
like
it's okay and just to cry on your shoulder, but they just won't
Mhm.
do that.
they don't want to do
They don't want
that.
to.
No.
I mean,
Yeah.
think of that core belief that I'm not inherently lovable
Mm.
and I need to do something to make people love me. I
Yeah.
need to perform to make people love me.
How
Yeah.
sad
Like
is that?
it's tragic, really.
Their
Yeah,
identity is
it
wrapped up in
really
that.
is.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is hard.
But
And
I
Oh,
don't
that's
think that
where
that's
that's where the vainglory and all of that stuff
And
comes.
it probably becomes an addiction because it's exciting
it
and
is.
I'm
It is.
creating, I'm
Oh,
achieving, I'm
yeah.
getting all these accolades and stuff. So it is very addicting,
Well, I
How do
blame
they
you
stop?
guys, Kathy, in HR.
What's
Yeah.
that? What's that?
You guys in HR were the ones that defined what we were supposed to be.
Are we pushing you and cracking the whip saying, get up there, come on.
Yeah, it's like,
Stand tall,
always
communicate.
what aren't you? And your whole evaluation was what your weaknesses were and what you needed to do better at to fit the mold,
Oh, geez.
as opposed to strengthening your core strengths that where you should have fit. Instead of everybody being promotable, they aren't always gifted in that.
That's right.
Mhm.
Everybody
Yeah.
wasn't
I'm
promotable.
preaching to the choir. I'm teasing you, but
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we live in a type 3 culture. America is a type
Yeah.
3
So
culture.
our
much.
corporate
Culture.
environment is.
You
You know,
bet. Yeah. Yeah.
Eat or be eaten and competitiveness and hey,
competitiveness, the American
Swim or
dream.
die.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
swim or
And then
die.
there's that horror of
Swim
horrors,
with the sharks. We have all those sayings, right?
Yeah.
Swim with
personal
the
Yeah,
sharks.
brand.
right.
Hey,
Oh, that.
What was
my.
that, Bill?
Personal
Yeah.
brand. Have you ever been pitched on that whole lie?
Your
You got to have a personal brand.
A personal brand. Oh,
Personal
okay.
brand.
Mm.
Yeah.
Said the
Gotcha.
three.
That's all the influencers on the internet now, Bill, probably.
Exactly.
All their
Exactly.
personal brands.
They're all threes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Breeze.
they're all performers.
They won't talk to us because, well,
We're irrelevant.
Done us
We're too old. We're
That's right.
crusty.
But I
Oh,
know that these characteristics of thinking that you are only as good as what you can produce is not exclusive to threes either. I mean,
that's right.
this is something that
True.
runs across the
Yeah.
board for all of
Right.
us. I think it's
You
probably
bet.
more pronounced and maybe more innate in threes, but I
Mhm.
mean, we all suffer from that, especially as you just said, it's a three culture that we live in, and so that's the way we're being measured, and so it's going to rub off, and we're going to have to try to live up to it in some way, shape, or form, just out of necessity.
Mhm.
But as we do that in the first half of life, as we kick into the second half of life, can we now start to balance that? Can we find that deeper self that is the true sense of worth and value and love, and then bring that forward into what we do so we can have the best of both worlds? That's what we're looking for. So,
Here, here.
yeah. Okay, we better call it there. It's getting late. It's way past William's bedtime.
Oh man, yeah.
All right, Scotty.
Father God, we thank you for being here and for us to be here with you and the time we spend learning and growing together and laughing together and pondering and trying to figure out this whole ride we call life. And we're grateful, Father, that we're called your children first and foremost because it gives us a distinct advantage. May we just turn in key into that advantage and be grateful for all the special blessings it provides. Thank you for the love of being our Abba Father. We love you, Lord Jesus. It's in your name, Lord Jesus, that we pray and we give our thanks and we say our amens. Amen.
Amen.
And
Thanks, everybody. Great
thank
discussion
you.
tonight. Hi, Jennifer. Didn't get a
Discussion.
chance to say hi to you. So glad that you made it. All right. See
Hi,
you all
Jennifer.
Bye,
on
everybody. Good
Sunday.
Bye,
night.
guys.
See you guys
All
later.
right.
Hey,
Bye,
guys.
Yeah.
Jordana. Good night. Oh, she's
Good
gone.
night. Good night. See y'all soon.